Chapter 7, Imperial Australia, Part 2. In 1965, the money used in Australia was the same as the British money, pennies, shillings and pounds. When Woola was in grade 3 in 1965, she learnt about the British money and weights by memory. Also, primary school kids memorised up to the 12 times tables. However, on the 14th of February 1966, the old money was taken away by the banks fairly quickly and replaced by dollars and cents. Within as little as 6 months, it was quite unusual to see any shillings and pennies around. Sometimes a penny or a shilling still turned up here and there for years. So, in 1967, all Australian school children had to learn the new metric system using dollars and cents, which is easier because it uses the 10 times table. Even though Australians gave up their old money, they did not want to give up the Queen and her family. For example, the Hamilton Botanical Gardens has a statue of Queen Elizabeth's grandfather, King George V. Also, in the 1960s, most classrooms in Grey Street State School had a photo of the Queen on the wall. Queen Elizabeth II got the throne on February the 6th of 1952 after the death of her father, King George VI. Everyone seemed very interested in the new Queen. Even Australia's Prime Minister, Robert Menzies, admired her. During the Queen's visit to Australia in 1963, he said good things about Queen Elizabeth by repeating some famous words from a poem that was written for Queen Elizabeth I, who lived from 1533 to 1603. I did but see her passing by, and yet I love her till I die. Everyone in Australia loved the Queen and her family. A popular magazine, the Australian Women's Weekly, often had British information on its pages. A year after Queen Elizabeth became the Queen, on the 3rd of June 1953, the magazine put a photo on its cover of a guard outside Buckingham Palace. The magazine celebrated the Queen's first visit to Australia in 1954 by showing her on the front cover. She was smiling and happy with her husband, Prince Philip, on Sydney Harbour. Most magazines were in boring black and white because colour cost too much money. They only used colour for the front cover. But when the Queen came to Australia, the women's magazines also used colour inside their magazines, showing the Queen's lovely dresses, hats, bags and shoes. Everybody, especially the ladies, wanted to see what the Queen was wearing. Also, the people of Hamilton felt special when the Queen and her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, visited them on February 26, 1954. One family in Ballarat even made a big crown in the front yard to show how much they loved the Queen. Sadly for them, the Queen did not visit Ballarat. Even though a lot of country towns invited her, only Mount Gambier and Hamilton were chosen, so people from other towns in Western Victoria felt very disappointed. Hamilton celebrated the Queen's visit. People decorated their windows with pictures of the Queen, and they also used paper in the colours of the English flag, red, white and blue. There were English flags everywhere. When the Queen and her husband, the Duke, arrived at Hamilton Airport at 4 o'clock, they were welcomed by about 1,000 happy local people. The couple were met by the mayor and his wife and then driven down Grey Street and Lonsdale Street to Melville Oval. At the Oval, about 13,000 school children had been waiting since 8 a.m. These children were from 175 different schools and were standing in groups behind ropes. They didn't wear hats to protect themselves from the hot sun, and some fainted in the heat and were taken to sick bay. It was lucky that some mothers had made extra sandwiches and brought along some fruit, cool drinks and ice creams for the children. Together with the children were several thousand other visitors. Many of them had travelled from far away to see the Queen. The Canberra Times newspaper reported that 50,000 people were there, which is a lot, because the people who lived in Hamilton were about 11,000. After the Queen and her husband were driven round the Oval between the lines of cheering and happy children, a little girl gave a bunch of flowers to the Queen. Then the couple were driven along Foster and Bree Streets to the airport for their plane flight to Melbourne. When the Queen returned to Australia for her second visit in 1963, she was again greeted by many cheering people. Ardgiro bought a lot of Australian women's weeklies because she loved the many colourful photos of the Queen wearing gloves, hats, and often holding a matching handbag. Here is a part of the poem that Prime Minister Menzies said to show his respect and love of the Queen. It is in dark writing. The poem was written by Thomas Ford, who lived from 1580 to 1648, who was an English musician and poet. There is a lady sweet and kind, there never was a face that so pleased my mind. I did only see her passing by, and yet I will love her till I die.